5 common breakfast foods we're going to cover in this video are considered healthy choices by some, but they spell blood sugar disaster for people with prediabetes and diabetes. But before we get started, I wanted to welcome you back to the Natural Diabetes Reversal channel. I'm Dr. Nicole Maholi, and this is your go-to channel for all things related to diabetes and prediabetes and how to reverse them naturally. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on the latest insights and tips. Now, it's important to know that how you start the day sets the stage for how well your blood sugar control will be for the entire rest of the day, making breakfast extremely important. There's a reason breakfast is considered the most important meal of the day. There are a lot of misconceptions surrounding certain breakfast foods. A lot of people believe these foods to be healthy, but in reality, they're a problem for blood sugar regulation. If you have diabetes and these foods are the first thing you're eating each day, you may struggle to get your blood sugar back on track the rest of the day, which can be really confusing when you think you're eating something healthy. With this video, I wanted to clear up some of the confusion and point out which healthy breakfast foods you might want to steer clear of first thing in the morning, especially if you have fatty liver, insulin resistance, prediabetes, or type 2 diabetes. Make sure to stay tuned until the end because I'll share where you can learn about ways to make some of these foods less damaging. Without further ado, let's get started with a food that's a hot topic this week: cereal. Now, I realize this may ruffle a few feathers because cereal is one of those foods that people can have a strong sense of allegiance to. For many of us, cereal brings a sense of nostalgia as we remember the cereal we ate when we were kids. Cereal is a common breakfast food, and when it's touted as a whole grain cereal, we believe it to be a healthy breakfast food. The problem with cereals and what makes them not the best option for people with diabetes and prediabetes is that they're high in refined carbohydrates and low in protein and healthy fats. Protein, healthy fats, and fiber are necessary for keeping blood sugar levels nice and stable. Now, whole grain cereals are considered healthy by some because they're thought to be high in fiber. But the reality is that the amount of fiber in cereal is pretty unimpressive. The amount of fiber in a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios, which is the top-selling cereal in the US, is only 3 grams per cup. There are 30 grams of total carbohydrates in that cup of cereal, 12 grams of which are added sugars, and only 3 grams of protein and 2 grams of fat. If our goal is to get 35 grams of fiber each day, which is a great goal to support blood sugar regulation, gut health, and overall health, we're falling short if we're relying on our bowl of cereal as a high fiber breakfast. Another factor that knocks cereal off the healthy breakfast foods list is that it's a packaged processed food. The processing of the grains that go into these foods strips them of vital nutrients. So the manufacturing companies that produce these cereals often add some of these vitamins back in, fortifying the cereal. I was listening to an interview that our local news did with a registered dietitian, and my mind was completely blown when she referred to cereal as vitamins in a box. Cereal is a processed food, stripped of nutrients, with a handful of vitamins added back. A half an avocado contains more fiber, more healthy fats, way more potassium, more folate, and overall more vitamins and minerals than that bowl of cereal we just talked about. If you're looking for a source of vitamins, processed foods are the last place you should be looking. Turn instead to unpackaged, unprocessed whole foods, or a high-quality multivitamin. In addition to cereal being a processed food that is high in carbs and low in protein, there's been discussion in the news recently about cereals containing pesticides and rising concern about what kind of health repercussions that can have. People with diabetes and prediabetes should be paying attention because pesticide exposure is associated with an increased risk for diabetes, among other chronic health conditions. This includes glyphosate, which you may know as Roundup, which is the most widely used herbicide in the US. Glyphosate exposure is associated with a higher risk of diabetes. Pesticides can impair blood glucose regulation, and they're found in non-organic and even some organic cereals and oats. So while whole grain cereals are often considered a healthy start to the day, they're a processed food, they contain pesticides linked to diabetes and other health concerns, they're mostly carbohydrate, and severely lacking in the protein necessary for blood sugar stability. The bottom line is that cereal shouldn't be considered a healthy breakfast food for people with prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. Next up, we have low-fat yogurt. This one really irritates me actually because yogurt can be a very healthy food. Yogurt contains probiotics, which are fantastic for immunity and gut health, and has the potential to contain a decent amount of protein and healthy fats. But low-fat yogurts often contain hidden sugars, especially those with fruit in them. The fruity low-fat yogurts can contain upwards of 20 grams of sugar in one small container. That's the same amount of sugar as half a can of cola. Those that don't appear to be high in sugar often contain artificial sweeteners instead. And contrary to what you would think, artificial sweeteners such as sucralose, aspartame, and acesulfame potassium are actually associated with an increased risk for diabetes. These low-fat, fruity yogurts often contain very little protein. A container of non-fat strawberry, banana, peach Activia yogurt only contains 4 grams of protein. And a container of low-fat strawberry Yoplait contains 5 grams of protein. These aren't much better than that bowl of cereal that we talked about earlier, which only had 3 grams of protein. When fat is removed from a food, often nutrients are removed with it, so it becomes a less nourishing and nutritious food. Fat isn't bad for us. In fact, healthy fats are quite important for overall health. Healthy fats are even associated with lower risk for diabetes and better blood sugar control. So removing the fats from yogurt actually makes it less healthy and nutritious. The third healthy breakfast food disaster for diabetes is fruit juice. The image many people have in their minds of a healthy breakfast often includes a glass of orange juice. Juice is a concentrated liquid form of sugar. A 12-ounce glass of orange juice contains 28 grams of sugar, which is only 12 grams less than that can of cola. There's very little, if any, fiber in most juices, and they don't contain protein or healthy fats, so drinking juice causes a pretty dramatic spike in blood sugar. So while fruit juices might be thought of as a healthier option than soda, they're still not a healthy breakfast food, especially for people with insulin resistance, prediabetes, and diabetes. This next one might surprise you. Oatmeal. I know so many people think of oatmeal as a healthy choice, but the reality is that oatmeal is high in carbohydrates and low in protein and healthy fats. And it really doesn't contain as much fiber as you would think. One serving, which is 48 grams, of organic, old-fashioned, plain rolled oats contains 33 grams of carbohydrates and only 3 grams of fiber, 5 grams of protein, and 3 grams of fat. But a lot of people are probably reaching for the instant Quaker oatmeal, which has the same amount of carbohydrates despite a smaller serving size of 43 grams. It has more sugar, less protein, and less fat, all of which results in a bigger blood sugar spike. We talked about pesticides showing up in cereals, and the same is true for oats. Non-organic oats are known to have higher levels of pesticides, which, as we talked about, are associated with an increased risk for diabetes as well as other chronic health conditions. The last food we'll cover that people often consider to be healthy but can really be problematic for people with blood sugar regulation issues is whole wheat toast. Again, it's one of those staples that a lot of people have in their mind associated with a healthy breakfast, right next to that glass of orange juice and container of low-fat yogurt. The reality is that once again, we're talking about a largely carbohydrate-based food that just doesn't supply the protein or fiber we need to keep blood sugar stable. Non-organic wheat products are also commonly high in glyphosate and pesticides, so we're dealing with the same issues as the cereals and oats we discussed earlier. Now, individually, each of these foods can spell disaster for someone with poor blood sugar regulation like diabetics. But what's an even bigger problem is that people often consume several of these at the same meal. Cereal with low-fat yogurt and a glass of orange juice is a common American breakfast. And using the numbers discussed in this video, that meal would contain upwards of 93 grams of total carbohydrates and 60 grams of sugar in one meal. That'll undoubtedly cause a big blood sugar surge and make regulating blood sugar levels more difficult the rest of the day. So, what are better alternatives to these so-called healthy breakfast foods? And if there's a particular food on this list you don't want to give up, is there a way to make these foods less damaging? Are there things you can do to minimize the blood sugar impact of these foods? When you register for the Diabetes Nutrition Workshop, you will get these very questions answered in detail. And you'll discover other simple ways to regain control of your blood sugar. I'll put a link to the workshop page in the description below, or you can watch this video for more information. I hope you found this helpful, and remember, if this inspired any questions, please let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for tuning in, friends. I'll see you next time.